Hello, Tribesters. I am so excited for this conversation with expert Jennie Francis. So I met Jennie a few years ago when I was in the midst of my own burnout and feeling really out of control with life in general. And I remember really vividly being in her office for the first time and sitting in her chair and going very deep, very quickly. And I went to see her a few times. I think I went to see her 4 or 5 times. And over that period, I started to regain this sense of control. And it was really fascinating. So Jennie is a hypnotherapist. She's qualified as a hypnotherapist and as a counselor from the UK college based at St. Charles Hospital in London. She was the in-house therapist for Channel 4. She's also been on a number of TV programs, including BBC 2, Channel 4, and she's got a roster of clients that include many politicians, entrepreneurs, well-known actors, and then also everyday people like me. But that's not what's important. What's important is that she's got this amazing skill to help you create the change in your life that you want, whatever that might be. And that might be breaking a bad habit. It might be embedding a new healthy habit. It could be helping you manage stress better. It could be helping you sleep better. It could be a fear, it could be a pain. Whatever it is, Jennie has this skill of really being able to get in touch with her client's need and bringing out a sense of calm, I guess, and helping them move towards the life that they want to lead. And so Jennie and I, in this conversation, are going to be talking about what hypnotherapy really is, what the science behind it, some of her interesting cases, as well as just linking hypnotherapy to well-being, to self-compassion. And I think that's what was the tick for me, was realizing that hypnotherapy will give us this ability to be a little bit more compassionate and nicer to ourselves. And that means that other things flow from that compassion. We're not treating ourselves so badly that, good things can flow from there. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a great one to have with Jennie. And as we head into a new year, it's a great way to think about what you want to set yourself up for and how you can create a lasting change. Happy listening, everyone. Hello, Jennie. This is such a pleasure to have you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so let's start with just learning a little bit about you. Can you tell us about your background and your journey to hypnotherapy?
Of course. So I started as a hypnotherapist, training as a hypnotherapist in 1999. And basically that was quite an intense year of doing very basic counseling, very basic hypnotherapy, obviously going on and doing more after that over the next few years. Prior to that, I owned a publishing company for 13 years, an antiques magazine, which was really, really wonderful, actually, and great fun. But it wasn't what I wanted to do, because I knew that once we'd sold it, I thought, I'm never going to do publishing again. So I realized it wasn't in my heart of hearts. And actually, funnily enough, originally I trained to be a teacher, and I always think, well, that was a bit of a waste of time, because I did my probationary year and I knew I would never teach again. But there is a process in all of the things that we do, that we learn over the years, that you find that you utilize those things in, being a self-employed and being a hypnotherapist and being a teacher of kinds in that way. All of those things actually do come into play in the hypnotherapy that I do today. And once I'd sold the magazine, I took a year out, because I like having time off and I like a nice work balance in my life. That's what I call it anyway. And one day, I know this sounds bizarre and unreal, and I feel very privileged that this did happen. I woke up and I went, I have to be a hypnotherapist. And it was powerful. It was like a vocation. It was like something I'd woken up, and it wasn't a dream or anything. It was just a feeling. And so I rang around all the hypnotherapy schools I could find, and I found one I liked, and I was going, this is madness. Nobody does that. They wake up and suddenly they're going to be this thing. But it just got stronger and stronger over the 6 months. And then I trained, and I loved it, everything about it. And then since then, that's it. That's what I've been, as a hypnotherapist. And
I mean, so it was truly a calling.
truly, that's what I feel in my heart of hearts. This is what I was born to be. And I know that's really privileged and very lucky, and all of those things that people dream of. So I've never had any qualms about it. I've never thought, oh, am I doing it right? Or is this working? All I know is that actually I'm driven by it. I'm driven by the results of it gets, and I'm driven by how effective it is, and all those things that I didn't even know at that beginning moment when I went, oh, I've got to do it, that now.
Well, I'm interested actually in that moment where you sort of had that aha, oh, I'm meant to be a hypnotherapist. Had you gone to a hypnotherapist before? Did you have connection with it before? Or was it really just out of the blue?
That's the weirdest thing. I don't think I knew anything about complementary therapy at all. It wasn't in my remit. It wasn't the type of person I was. We were journalists, in journalism, we got drunk every lunchtime and stayed drunk in the afternoon. And, that's how our life was. And it just wasn't in my world, which made it even more strange. And everyone, my family, my friends going, well, don't be ridiculous. You can't do that. I said, no, but I have to.
Yeah. And it's something that people do dream of, trying to find their purpose so that they can live aligned with where they're meant to go.
And I changed. Everything about me changed. When I was first a hypnotherapist, I used to go around like I was on skates, trying to be all angelic and be this person that wasn't really me, but I was trying to fit into the role of what I thought a hypnotherapist should be, what a therapist should be. After a year or so, I went, oh, I better be myself. And obviously that was much more effective, being yourself. It's not just easier, but actually it's much better for the people that you're treating as well.
Yeah, it's funny how those stigmas can sort of play into things, because I teach yoga as well. And there's some stigmas around yoga teachers, and sort of like, do you go down that path or do you teach from your heart? And actually, whenever I sort of use certain phrases that might be more yogi phrases, it just doesn't necessarily sound like me. And I get much more results, or I have more connection with my clients, my yogis, if I really speak from my own truth. Yeah. So can you give us sort of and talk to us about hypnotherapy? Because there is some stigma, obviously, around hypnotherapy in general. So how can people really understand what it truly is?
So I thought when I first trained, and there weren't that many hypnotherapy schools, that over the years that would change. Honestly, it hasn't. It still has the same hypnosis. And I've noticed that I haven't looked recently, but at one point when I was looking on the NHS website, it said, oh, there's not very much research about hypnotherapy and hypnosis, which is nonsense, because there's millions of papers about it. So it's almost as though, I wonder if it's because it's so effective, but it doesn't make any money. It's not like the pharmaceuticals where, you have to keep buying the tablets and what have you, and it can all be generic. It's one of those things that still has that same thing, like, oh, hypnosis, which would be so wonderful if people could actually recognize, if they came and had a bit of hypnotherapy, maybe they still might need some counseling or some CBT or something like that. But the thing that gave them the problem, like it might be an addiction or a fear or an anxiety or something from your past, you can deal with that very, very effectively and fairly rapidly with hypnotherapy. Then if there's other issues where they need the support and the help and the guidance of a talking therapy to, be able to live in that way that allows them to do that, it would be so much more effective. I do have some psychotherapists who use me to help their clients break addictions, drug addiction, alcohol, gambling. So then they can help them with the lives that they want to have, that they need to have. I think it's got it the wrong way round. I'm the last port of call. Oh, we've tried everything else. We'll give hypnotherapy a go.
It almost sounds like it could be and should be a complementary practice, treatment to some of those other counseling types.
Absolutely.
And how does it work exactly?
So what happens is during the first part of the session, you have a chat with somebody about whatever it is, whether it's a phobia, whether it's addiction, whether it's, and it's very good at helping with things from the past to help people let go of those. So it's not that people don't tell their story, because that's essential, you know, to part of healing and well-being. But fairly rapidly, within that first half an hour of telling your story, we're already finding solutions to how you may be able to be, if something was different about it, if you felt differently about it, if that problem had been reduced or faded away, or if you could forget about it. So you're already finding a way that somebody might feel or be or react. The best one I ever had was this lady, and she was 59 when she came to see me, and she came to stop smoking. And I said to her, well, you know, how many do you smoke a day? And she said 60 cigarettes. Yes, 60 cigarettes. And I said, what do you do? She said, well, I don't do anything. I sit in my window and I smoke. And I'm a bit stumped now, because I'd never had anybody that smoked 60 cigarettes a day and done nothing. So I said, well, what would you do if you didn't smoke? She said, I'd be a stand-up comedian. I went, oh, which was this wildest thing that happened. And 2 years later, she came back to see me, not for smoking, but because she'd written this piece of comedy that the BBC wanted. And she was telling me the names of the actresses who were coming to read for it. I'm going, oh my gosh, these are like that. Within 2 years, something changed and she was transformed into this. Well, it wasn't quite stand-up comedy, but it was writing it and she wanted to perform it. So
yeah, but it's incredible that the hypnotherapy, the sessions with you had untapped something that was like deep down. It sounds like it was there and just needed to be unleashed in a way.
That's the lovely thing about it. People come for one thing, yet often something else happens because they've been released from that one thing. It is, and it happens a lot. It allows people to, I suppose, to live the authentic life, the real life, the life that they feel more compatible with, I think.
Yeah. And is there science behind it?
There is. So the type of hypnotherapy I do, which is indirect hypnotherapy, was basically devised.
Sorry, can I interrupt there?
Yes.
1 second. So what's indirect? And is there a direct hypnotherapy?
There is.
Okay.
Direct is a very, like you see on the shows. You're going to do this, do that. You're going to respond like that, respond like this. Whereas indirect is much softer. And it was developed by a man called Milton Erickson. And basically, he told stories, metaphors, often not putting people into trance, actually, I noticed. And there's lots of information about him. There's lots of books that he's written. There's lots of recordings about him. There's lots of books that have been written about him, because he fundamentally is sort of the basis of what most hypnotherapists base their hypnotherapy on. There are some direct, but it is a very do this, do this, do this. Some people will respond to that, but a majority of people won't. So you want it to be accessible by as many people as possible. So
yeah, and I would assume that people, one of the reasons they have the stigma is because of the direct, and so they don't know that this softer version, indirect, actually has so many other benefits. Yeah,
it's not the same as the hypnosis you see in a show, although you do use some of those similar techniques, but the things they do is like, person thinks they're speaking Chinese, or they forget numbers or their name or something. You can do that for a small amount of time, but fairly rapidly, that person, within a few seconds or minutes, that person would go back, oh, I remember my name. Oh, yes, I've got 5 fingers, not 6, and all that sort of thing. So what happens, that can last for a few seconds or minutes. Nobody has ever come to me and said, I would like you to change my life for a few seconds or a few minutes. They want to have a change for a lifetime. They want to have something that lasts. So it has to be softer. And it brings me to that point of where people's expectation of hypnotherapy is, I'll have a session and I'll be sorted. That does happen, but for very specific things like stopping smoking is quite easy and to deal with in one session. But then again, on the packet, it says it gives you cancer and it kills you. You know, that's quite a lot of leverage to stop. So it's usually better to do a few sessions, usually between 3 and 6 sessions. That's it, really.
Okay. And then back to the science question. So what is the science behind it? So
it is made up of a language, and the language involves certain things like double binds, which is you say, well, you can feel calmer now, we can feel calmer later. It is made up of a speech pattern. When you hear hypnosis being done, you will notice that there is a certain pause here, or a silent bit there, or candescence of the voice. You use, if you're doing good hypnotherapy, you use language which is very much about what you want to be, or how you, using positive language basically rather than the negative language. It has a way of being and people will come to me because they want to get the benefits of hypnotherapy. You know, if you had somebody say, I bet you can't hypnotize me. Well, you might be able to, but it'd be quite hard. It'd be an effort. So it's
because that person's resistant to it.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
You can
and
do
once
it.
you when you open yourself to it, once you open yourself to someone, you're allowing in a certain energy.
I would say the science of hypnosis is it's a language. There is something called NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, which is based on the science of hypnosis. But NLP has taken it to a new level where they break it down into even smaller chunks of which will be about VACOG, which is the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, and what's the other one? Gustatory and olfactory. So you've got smell and taste in there as well, and they will use all of these things to find out what makes people tick. So some people are very visual, and if they are, if you ask them to remember something, a color of something, they'll look up where their eyes are trying to look at something. And auditory usually means you're moving eyes side to side, or if you're feeling something, you might look down. It's if someone's lying, and this isn't plateau, everybody looks down when they lie, but they might have a flicker of a downward look with their eyes. It's really good if you're watching a sort of murder mystery on TV, because the actors are so good, they'll do that flicker and you go, oh yeah, I know who did it now.
And can hypnotherapy solve any issue if the person is willing, I guess?
I will take on a lot of things that people bring to me, and it is very successful in sort of things that all sorts of areas, but there is a limitation, and it's not so much the limitation of the hypnosis itself. It's that sometimes if people have psychological issues, maybe, schizophrenia, we're also told not to treat epilepsy as well. People with a pacemaker, we're told not to treat those. So it's not so much the limitations of the hypnotherapy. It's actually there are certain people who have certain psychosis that most hypnotherapists are not trained to do. Some are, and that's fine, but I'm not trained to do that. I wouldn't do that because it's not appropriate. So it's not so much the limitations of the hypnotherapy, it's more that certain people with certain issues would not be appropriate for them to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. And what are some of the common issues that people would come to you with? Obviously, you said smoking.
Lots of addictions, and probably even more addiction now at the moment with people being locked down with the COVID and everything. Phobias, that's a very weight loss. Public speaking. Public speaking is a big one that I do. Fear of flying. These are the really common ones that I see a lot of people for. Anxiety, stress.
And so actually stress is a big one now, and just thinking about workplace stress and burnout.
Yeah.
How can hypnotherapy address those issues?
Because stress is a feeling, it's an emotion. And once it gets hold of you, it becomes a repeated pattern. It produces hormones that will then kick into making you feel not just bad in your head, but bad in your body. You know, you might feel it in your chest or your stomach. And if it's continuous, if it's, you know, you're going to work every day and every day is going to be a stressful day, it starts to tell not just on your mental well-being, but your physical well-being as well. And what hypnotherapy does, well, this is how I treat it, one part of it, is to help people to have a certain detachment to the thing that's making them feel stressed. If it is an issue or a person or the amount of work, or sometimes I have to say work stress, and I do see a lot of people for it, when they're telling me the reason, I say, and I mean, this has got nothing to do with hypnotherapy, I say, but haven't you told somebody that this is causing you to actually have to stay at work till 8 or 9 o'clock at night? Oh no, they wouldn't like it. I said, well, they wouldn't like you to be ill. They wouldn't want you to. Sometimes, I know it sounds really weird, but I think when you get so involved in it, when you get so involved in the stress of it, the logic part goes as well. So sometimes it's dealing with that little bit, but allowing people to have a distance from those things that are causing them the stress and the worry. If it's something that's external to you, if you're not feeling it every moment of the day, it becomes something that you can rationalize in a different way. That also helps the unconscious mind recognize that actually, oh, it's nothing to do with me. It's to do with those issues out there. And I can deal with those at my will in the way that I can manage them.
Yeah, that's so interesting, that whole idea of detachment, which is what we try to do or teach in yoga and meditation. Is like trying to create that little bit of distance. Like, how can you take a pause before actually reacting? And actually that reaction is your choice. So in a way, we have the stress, we're taking it on, but we're choosing to keep it there.
Yeah.
And so hypnotherapy, if I'm understanding correctly, creates that distance between the external stress and how you actually internalize it.
Yes, it gives you that pause. It's literally, it gives you that moment where you can go, and then you don't have to react to it in the same way. And as soon as you have even that very subtle, slight little difference of a reaction, it feels different. And of course, as soon as it feels more comfortable inside, your mind goes, oh, I'll repeat that because that feels better.
And actually, this makes me think of something. It's like some of us have these habits and we're so used to the habits that the habits actually are like our security blanket. I'm just thinking of bad habits being our security blanket. We're almost afraid to give them up, because what happens if we give them up? Then we show our true self. And this is going live in January, when it's a time to reset, when it's time to hopefully leave bad habits behind and start some new, healthy, longer term habits. How can we make sure that those embed for a longer term?
So you mentioned meditation, which is great.
Well, no, yeah.
That's always beneficial, useful to have, and something that you can do. Although I've never really done very much meditation, weirdly enough, even though I'm a hypnotherapist. What hypnotherapy can do, it can give you a new perception of how you want to be as a person. You might have a dream or an idea or a thought of what you want to be as a person, but you can't implement it, because every time you do, something catches you out. You know, like the New Year's resolutions that last till second week of January or what have you.
If you're lucky, second week of January.
You're lucky. Yeah. Because your unconscious mind, exactly what you said about it becoming a habit and then becoming your comfort zone, might be a horrible comfort zone. But it is your comfort zone because it's repeated so often that that's the thing that it knows and trusts and says, this is your safe place. So when you want somebody to move to a safe place, which is better, you kind of want it to be a step-by-step maneuver, because it's easier, it feels more natural, more comfortable. And I think this is a problem with hypnotherapy, that it's seen as a one session fixes all, whereas my clients who come and see me on a regular basis, maybe it's even just once a month or something, the benefits they notice over years and the way that they live their lives and what they achieve is, well, I see it, I suppose, as well. Maybe other people do it and I just don't see it or know about it. I don't know. But it is one of those things that actually I often say to people, they'll say, oh, I noticed a small difference. And I'll say, well, that's really good, because that small difference is the thing that allows that part of your mind to go, oh, this is okay. I can do more of this. And I think rather than go, right, by my daughter's wedding at the end of March, I'm going to have lost 3 stone. Right, 1st of January, I'm stopping smoking. It's a hard thing to do. Or I'm going to, take up running, and I'm going to, it's great to take up running, but it's that thing of doing it in a way that is manageable, but also recognizing as well that if you have a blip, that's normal. If you have a time where something happens, you're not following the schedule, that's okay. It's when people go, oh, I failed. Oh, that's it. It's over. It's done with. They stop. Whereas actually they go, oh, it's just a blip. And then they can go back to it. And I think there is a part of what hypnotherapy allows you to do, because fundamentally, this sounds a bit lame, but fundamentally it makes you feel better about yourself. It makes you feel better. So if you have a blip, you go, well, I'm doing okay. And then a couple of days later, you go, oh yeah, I can get back to it.
So do you think that hypnotherapy, I'm just piecing it all together, because you're using that positive language, it's almost like positive self-talk, positive affirmations, that it's allowing me, your client, someone as an individual, to actually be more self-compassionate?
Yes, definitely.
So they have that blip and it's like, no problem. I can just pick up the next day. It's never going to be perfect, but I can roll with the punches.
Definitely. We are quite, fundamentally, we seem to be quite cruel to ourselves, I think. We are very hard on ourselves as human beings. Whereas actually, if you ever spoke to your best friend or your child or something in that way, and said, oh, you're rubbish, you're terrible, you can't do a maths sum, well, don't bother then, you're never going to be able to do it. If we ever did that to ourselves, or did it to somebody else, I beg your pardon, you would crush them. They would feel terrible. And I think we do it to ourselves on a daily basis. And
Totally.
rarely go, well done, you were amazing.
I totally agree with you. And it's like that little voice in your head that is just, it's whatever that story is, and it's there and there. And some of us don't ever recognize our story that we're telling ourselves because it's just there. And once you can get clear on what that story is, whether it's I'm not good enough or no one will love me or da da da, so all of a sudden you can like reset and start to catch it out and then be a little bit more positive, I guess.
And coming back to the stress, it's one of the biggest things that keeps stress in the loop, is that being hard on yourself, mean to yourself, because you're never giving yourself a break. You're never giving yourself a pat on the back, a bit of compassion and a bit of care. Or I have these well done cards that I send out to people. I mean, they are a bit extreme, they go way over the top, but they're just so that they can read them, sort of sit around the place and look at them, even though they go, well, this one's mad. I'm never going to say that to myself, but it's one of those things that when you read it, you see it or hear it in your head. So once you do learn to be kinder to yourself, and there is an exercise I get people to do, which is the well done exercise, that they have to say well done. And anybody can do this, by the way, well done 10 times a day. And you say it for normal everyday things like, oh, I stood up, well done. Open the door, well done. Turn the light on, well done. And if you do it 10 times a day, which is a lot to remember, over a period of weeks or months or whatever it takes, you do start to think, wow, she keeps telling it to me, he keeps telling it to me. There must be some truth in it. Keeps telling me I'm doing well done and haven't done anything, so it must be okay. And it shifts something it's very subtle, but it's one of those things that I think has a really powerful effect. But people find it quite hard to do because, of course, it's so much easier to say, you haven't done that very well. Oh, you idiot.
I love that exercise. I'm actually going to test that out. Do you think that how quickly would people start to notice a difference?
I have done it. And you do have quite a big response to it in some ways as well, sometimes. Perhaps in a matter of weeks. I mean, it's a long-term one, because, you know, you're still going to have the voice in there going, oh, I don't know what I'm doing this for. What load of rubbish. Oh, stupid woman make me do this. Oh, blimey, I don't know why I'm bothering. You know, because you've got that bit, because that's the bit that's in there. So that's there. But being persistent, and that's always one of the best things to do to actually have a good outcome. So I did it for months and months. And I know fundamentally the issues that I had, insecurities or abandonment ones and all those, they don't actually exist anymore. I just don't have them anymore. And yeah, then I don't know, it was months I did it for. So it's not a short-term one. It's it's one for the long haul.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like the gratitude journal.
Exactly.
A little bit.
But
like
you do it in your head.
Yeah.
You say it in your head, but keep it in your head. Don't do it out loud. Keep it in your head.
Okay.
There are ones that you do out loud, but this is different.
And would people, just going back to that idea of being a little bit more compassionate, do people obviously come to you for a specific issue, whether it's fear of flying, it's presentation, it's anxiety? Do people come to you also just recognizing that they're self-critical? Or is that more of an outcome that they start to become more compassionate?
Yeah, no, they don't really notice it, because it's not like you've got an actual voice in your head saying it, really. It's there. It's just an underlying factor that, could have been there since you were tiny. So you don't really notice it until it's recognized that actually that may be some of the language you're using that is holding you back or stopping you. And, using this to help with stress and relieve stress and ease stress, because what it does, it basically, and I know this is a word that's used a lot, which is confidence, because once you're not being so critical of yourself, you feel better about yourself, you can feel more confident. So it does allow you, especially in a work situation as well, where you are being kinder and more caring. It's like you're the boss that's giving yourself the recognition, the praise. We do lots of stuff to win medals, to get the well dones, to receive that accolade, to be appreciated. When you're doing it in your head and you're doing it for yourself, you can fundamentally help to change your response to how you react to other people. And often stress is a reaction to other people. And I know it might be a workload and stuff like that, but they're quite physical things. But if it is a particular person or a way of how the workplace works, by giving yourself this inner power, this strength to be kind to yourself, you also start to view the outside world differently. And weirdly enough, the outside world starts to view you differently as well. So their response to you is different. So things that you might have said might even been a tone of voice, oh, in that stress kind of way, or a bit short or what have you, not because you were feeling anything about that person, only because you were feeling inside this stress. And that person goes, oh, they're being a bit short with me today. So their reaction to you is like, keep them at a distance. Whereas actually, once you change that, and actually you are, this is a very basic, simplistic one, but once you change that and you are, you take your time a bit more, and you're not in that same sort of anxious way, people respond to you in a different way, much more openly, much more comfortably, much more joyfully. And so it's a circular thing. The more you give it out, the better you receive it. And I think it works everywhere.
Yeah. Can we just talk a little bit about some of your cases? Just as you mentioned the one before about the smoker and the comedian. Are there any that sort of are highlights for you? Ones that you're like, wow, that was amazing that we were able to achieve that, or your client was able to achieve that, or maybe even one that didn't go as expected?
Well, I have had some wonderful things happen, but that's because it's hypnotherapy. So I have got a client who came to see me and had been overweight all her life, and she was in her mid-30s. And I said, there's two things I'm going to ask you to do. Don't weigh yourself and don't go on a diet. She went, okay then. And so consequently, over a period of 2 years, she lost 45 kilos, which is nearly 100 pounds.
Yeah, 100 pounds.
She transformed into, in this 2 years, an athlete, really, really competitive, swimming oceans and things like that, because that was always in her to be that. It was just not being able to be promoted. There are ones with, what are other ones I think about?
And how many times did she see you? Was she consistently seeing
Yeah,
you?
Okay. She was consistent. And actually, it's one thing I'm going to do for the weight loss one is do a online thing that people could have on a consistent basis, because it's been programmed, I think, into the diet mentality that is, it's not just a diet mentality, you know, there's the issues with cravings, emotional eating and binge eating, all types, and you know, it crops up so often that I thought, right, if I do something like that on a regular basis for people, just do it online. I did do it live, but I think it's going to be much easier for people to have access to online.
Sorry, just to interrupt, you're going to do, I think you had mentioned this but to me before, you're going to do an online weight loss program.
An ongoing one that just goes on every week. You get a live session and they'll be recorded so you can listen to it. And I can cover all the bases because there's so many of them. And I think that's why, because I always find the weight loss not hit and miss, because people do lose weight, but it's not sustainable because something happens. So that would be a nice thing to do. There's also many, I'm trying to think of them now. So there was a man who came to see me and he had really bad anxiety. He'd been to hospital and all that sort of thing. This is like when people go, oh, hypnotherapy is a miracle. So we did the trance. He'd stopped coffee. He'd been out of hospital. He'd gone on and on. We did the trance. He opened his eyes and said, I'm cured. Now, I have no idea how that man knew he was cured because he was sitting there and he just opened his eyes. I think sometimes this is the thing about stress and anxiety. It causes so much problems that even by being able to relax in that deep way, and he was cured actually, weirdly enough, which is odd. I did have a man ring me one time and say, can you hypnotize my wife to make her believe I haven't had an affair? No. I know.
I like the request. I like the request.
People who come for, will come and see me and say, oh, can you help me with my drinking, to curb the drinking or stop the drinking? Can you help me stop? And then they'll come back and say, oh, can you help me stop smoking? And they come back and then I have seen whole families. And then I've seen the children of those people who I saw, who I, helped when they, because you can use hypnosis very effectively. And I haven't trained in this, but there are people very well trained in hypnobirthing, which people use a lot because it's very successful, very effective. At the beginning of COVID, and so I had to move all my practice online. And I had this chap come to see me and he sat like this for the whole session. He never actually looked at me. And so then a couple of weeks later, we did another one and he's facing me and he said, I'm feeling better. I said, yes, I can tell you're looking at me. He went, oh, was I not looking? I said, no, you didn't look at me at all. He went, oh. And he'd come because he'd been through, his partner had died and he felt guilty. And that was 4 years ago. And that's a long time to feel guilty because your partner died. And then I did another session. I think it must have been about 3 or 4 weeks later, watching this man transform. I mean, physically, I could only really see his face. And he went from being like, not looking at me, to this really very lovely looking man, full of life, full of energy. And that was a lovely thing because I'd always done online sessions, but didn't know if they were going to be as effective as face-to-face when that was all you had. And to see that and see it in front of me, I go, oh yes, that's great. It's one of those lovely ones.
Yeah, and I'm sure as a practitioner, just to see that transformation, it gives you the joy and the confidence that you're actually really impacting that person. That person's
children,
life.
It's always nice to do about 9 or 10 is about the youngest I see. And they're fabulous at it. They're brilliant because they just go straight into that place and do it.
Yeah. So what would the children come for?
Oh, anxiety, fears, phobias. Sometimes if they have problems like with dyslexia and stuff like that, because they struggle so much, and that you know, what pressure there are on children, and they're learning it. Sometimes, especially when it's so difficult, it causes them a lot of problems, and so that's always enjoyable. But I just loved it when people will come to me and say, oh, you know, phantom limb problems where people have had an amputation and they've still got terrible pain there. But yeah, but anybody will, within reason, and I do quite like it when people come with sort of all the things that push me, you know, and you know, especially with the online stuff now, because I record a lot of the trances for people so they can listen to it afterwards, which is, you know, that's a nice benefit to have. I tried to record them when I was in the office, but it was such a rubbish sound, you know, you really wouldn't want to listen to it too often. Whereas the Zoom, it's lovely, it's really clear.
We could just continue talking on and on and on. I'd love to hear all of your stories, but we don't have all the time. So how can people find you, Jennie?
You can find me on my website, which is jenniefrancis.co.uk. And that's the easiest way to see basically what I do. And it has my phone number, my email. And if there are any things that you wonder if hypnotherapy could help with, get in contact with me, because I can always let you know. If it's something that I can't do, I might know somebody that can help you. So it's always worth getting in contact, because if I can't do it, I will probably know somebody who can. So that's always a useful thing to do.
Yeah, there's always a really good inner circle.
Absolutely.
This has been such a joy. Thank you so much. It's been really fascinating. I think hypnotherapy is one of those things that more people need to know about, because it is really effective. And unfortunately, it has a little bit of a stigma, but clearly it has so many benefits for so many people, both young and old. Yeah. So I hope that this starts to get the message out to some people, and then they can start to spread the word as well.
Lovely. Thank you for having me, Gret. That's great to see.
My pleasure. Thanks, Jennie.
Okay. Bye.